like to welcome everyone to today's meeting and remind members that this meeting will be recorded. Item 1, Sederunt, apologies. Claire, could you do the business, please?
Thank you, Chair. We've got 11 members present this morning. No apologies.
Thank you. Item 2, declarations of interest. Do you have any declarations from members? No, thank you. Item 3, minute of the meeting of 28th November 2017. These minutes are for noting as they were previously approved at full council. Are we happy to note the minutes? Okay, thank you. Item 4, Police Scotland, Dumfries and Galloway Local Plan 11-month performance update, 1st April 2017 to 28th February 2018. Report by Director of Communities. I'd like to say I welcome the report from Police Scotland as it allows elected members and public to scrutinise the performance on key community safety activities including antisocial behaviour, public protection and road safety. Chief Superintendent Gary Ritchie, Divisional Commander for V Division Dumfries and Galloway, is here to speak to the report. I'll open up the meeting to members' debate. Councillor Howie.
Thanks, Chair. Commander, just looking at page 12 of the report, it's the reference, sorry, I'm lying, page 14, about school officers. Alongside partner from education, we are currently reviewing the role and responsibilities of our school officers across the region to achieve greater consistency and clarity of function. Will that result in a decrease in hours of police officers in the school at all?
Well, good morning, Chair. Good morning, members. First of all, thanks for the question. What we're embarking on this year is a review of our youth engagement strategies, and we're looking to develop a new youth engagement strategy which will involve engaging with children and young people in schools and in communities. Our current deployment of schools-based officers across the region is inconsistent. Some schools have a dedicated officer and other schools share an officer, or 3 schools share an officer. And I don't think we get the best from that model that we can do in terms of engaging our young people. So what we're looking at is actually developing something that's consistent. And we're doing that in partnership with the council and the schools. It won't result in a decrease in the amount of attention that schools get from, or that school children get in terms of engaging with police officers. If anything, I'd like to see that enhanced and improved. But as I say, that how we actually deploy needs to be a bit smarter and a bit more consistent.
Right. Yep.
Thank you, Councillor Bell.
Thanks, Chair. It's just a bit a question on roads policing. Obviously, on page 25 of 64, we're looking at 7,240 speeding vehicles on the region's roads and the West Safety Camera Unit. I know that sounds quite a high figure. Is there any way in future we can have a breakdown on that? You know, if that could be in 30-mile limit zones, 40-mile zones, or is there an A roads on 60-mile? It's just giving an indication, is the speeding taking place in 30-mile areas or 40-mile zones or 60? It just gives an indication where we're actually targeting. Because at the end of the day, I'm getting constituents coming forward to me in North West Dumfries and they're complaining about speeding in 30-mile zones at various times at night. And I think it'd be interesting to see where you're actually catching these people.
The safety camera predominantly focuses on the A roads, so that's our 60-mile-an-hour zones. But also in some of these roads, as you know, there's 50 and 40s as well. They can deploy to some of the built-up areas in our 30-mile-per-hour zones, but they tend to focus on the A roads. And in respect of the breakdown, I don't know, it's not something that I've ever asked for. I will ask on your behalf and try and get you that. So if we want to bring it back to this committee, we can, or I can speak to you direct off-table, Councillor, and try and get that for you. I'm not sure to what level of detail or how long it would take to actually get that detail, but perhaps you and I could correspond off-table and I can try and get you that information.
Thank you, Guy. I wonder if you could perhaps just share that with all members. It's by email. That'd be fine. Thank you. Councillor Murray.
Thanks. It's a question about the stop and search data on page 15. I'm assuming that the number of statutory searches is a subset of the number of stop searches.
Yes.
Yes, so there's actually only 2 searches which were non-statutory, one of which was positive. Is that correct?
That's right, yes.
Yeah,
indeed.
so that the vast majority are now statutory searches.
It's an interesting, as you will see, I mean, we don't have the comparative figures there, but clearly the use of stop search has dropped quite dramatically over the last couple of years. And now that we have the new framework in place, I'm actually expecting over the coming months and perhaps in future reports to the committee, you'll see that increasing as our officers' confidence in terms of using the legislation and using it appropriately returns.
Councillor Lever.
Yeah, just a couple of questions. One's on page 17 about the seizure of assets. What proportion of assets which are identified actually end up being seized? Because obviously that would act as a deterrent. There's no point in building up assets if following conviction you actually lose them in terms of proceeds of crime. And the other one is the number of pedestrians and cyclists injured on page 23. Do we actually report the number of pedestrians and cyclists injured? Because I know in terms of young people either walking to school or cycling to school, there's a perception once again that it's very dangerous to do that by some parents. So do you actually have figures on
that? I know for a fact that we do have figures on pedestrians and also age ranges, etc. The Scottish Government figures. But again, I can, as part of the figures that Councillor Bell had asked me to get, I can have a look and see if I can also provide you, if you like, with a suite of road accidents and road policing offences, if you like, and bring that back to committee. I can look at breaking that down for you. In reference to your point about assets considered for restraint, cash seizures under the proceeds of crime legislation are, physical seizures of cash when we are executing warrants or when we search people who we suspect have been involved in the supply of drugs or involvement in organised crime. Physical seizures of bundles of cash, and clearly criminals have got a bit smarter and tend not to carry so much cash with them just now, which is why you're seeing quite a big drop in that. The assets for consideration to restraint, I mean, that is almost as much as we can do, and then we need to hand it over to the Crown in terms of proceeds of crime legislation to enforce that and actually seize that and deprive criminals of their property and their profits. So I think that's a really encouraging figure. I wasn't quite sure of the point you were making there, Councillor, sorry.
Sorry. Yeah. It's one thing to identify the assets which a criminal has. It's another one to what percentage of those assets overall are actually seized by the Crown effectively.
Again, as I say, that's Crown Office figures, and I can ask the question on your behalf if they're willing to publicise that. I think they do publicise it on an annual basis. A percentage of what actually, but having said that, these inquiries and these prosecutions, take place over a lengthy period of time. So assets that we've seized here for consideration of restraint this year, it could be a couple of years down the line before there's actually a determination made in the courts as to whether they should be restrained or returned to the offenders.
Councillor Lever.
Well, from a deterrence point of view, I don't know whether it's the police's responsibility, as you said. It obviously isn't. If that was reported back to the community to make people aware that if you obtain assets through illegal use, you will lose them.
No, definitely. It's a good point, Councillor. As I say, I'll, again, on your behalf, I'll speak to Crown Officer, try and source those figures for you. And whether or not they're actually broken down by region, I don't know, because as you can imagine, these seizures relate to organised crime groups who don't recognise boundaries and are nationwide and UK-wide and sometimes even international. But you're right, I think there's definitely a positive story there, just reflecting the good work that we've seen over the past year. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ferguson, then Councillor Charteris.
Thanks, Chair. Good morning, Gary. It's kind of the same question as both Graham and Jeff have asked, but only this time it's about stop and search. Have we any idea how many of the stop and searches are just people going about their normal business, as opposed to people maybe attending festivals, big events, sports events and stuff like that? Do we target the stop and searches then, or is it just the run-the-mill patrols who are just spotting something and saying, let's have a look? An idea that would be good, and I don't expect you to answer today, but obviously if you can have a wee look at it for us, it just gives us a better idea of exactly where the stop and search thing is. Handy if we get somebody come to our surgeries complaining about the police stopping them every time they walk down the street. Yeah.
Well, I don't think that happens anymore. As I say, there's been a massive drop-off in the number of stop searches and a complete, as you know, renewal of our performance culture and how we actually go about our business over the last couple of years. Yeah. I don't have the actual figures here. We do record during our festivals, how many stop searches that we undertake. So I will be able to source you that figure. I just don't have it to hand just now. But there will, 8,000 people going through the doors at Eden. They're not all searched at the gate, despite what the organisers might have said in the past. But there will be, I'd imagine, several hundred. But I can get you those figures, Councillor, if it would help.
That's brilliant, actually, because it puts it in perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Charteris.
I made a remark in an early one of these meetings about the amount of time that a policeman were actually going to community councils. And I'm very pleased to see here that you raised the figure to 80%. And that was just what I wanted to see. I would also like to say that I regularly see policemen at the 6 community councils that I go to. And they're very much appreciated their visit, and I think they're very useful both to the police constable who's going, and certainly it is to the members of the community council. There are 6 of them in Locker, who have an opportunity to speak directly to the police. So I congratulate you on improving that figure, and I hope you'll still keep your effort going I know it's time consuming, but late and the rest of it, but it is much appreciated and very well used service that they have an opportunity to speak directly to a policeman.
Thanks for your positive comments there. Obviously, over the past few years, we've reorganised how we deploy as a division purely for that reason, to improve community engagement. It was a cornerstone of mine to ensure that community engagement became the focus of our policing strategy. I think in an area like this, that is where our business is. And attending community council meetings and seeing that massive rise. I think it was about 25% before we started in this new regime, and now we're up to 80%. So I'm really happy with that as well. I still think there's a way to go. We're developing our pop-up events. We're increasing our social media presence, all of which I think improves our engagement with our local communities, and it remains a cornerstone of our local strategy. So I'm very pleased to take the positive feedback, and that shows that it's working.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Murray.
Yeah, thanks. With apologies, I'm actually going to ask about something that's not in the report, and that is the recent change in the policy and the deployment of armed response vehicles, which, as you know, previously the deployment of armed officers to routine incidents was very controversial in Dumfries and Galloway and across Scotland. I wondered if you could maybe say a little about what's changed and whether or not the deployment will be reported to us in future reports.
Well, I can, to answer your second question first, I can report on how we're going to implement. We're just starting just now, actually, on the new process for implementing. Just to give you a bit of background, we have increased the number of armed patrols in the region. Everywhere in Scotland increased the number of armed patrols in the region following the recommendations by the UK government based on the threat level. So, and what that means is there are more armed officers working in the region than there were. Now, these officers are not my officers. They belong to Central Service or Operational Support Department. And previously I had no contact with them whatsoever in respect of what they did in Dumfries and Galloway, which in truth was not very much because of the controversy surrounding their deployment and their visibility. So, referring back to the correspondence that I've shared with all members, when this new process was first proposed, all the new policy allows is for me to have an element of control roundabout tasking these officers to support local priorities. So probably won't see, in fact, you definitely won't see armed officers going to routine calls. What you might see is us using armed officers to assist in some of our divisional initiatives, whether it's, actually deploying them in areas where they don't normally deploy, whether it's using them to help do not roadblocks, but road stops and vehicle stops and things like that, and so you potentially could see an increase in their visibility. But it's been quite carefully controlled at the moment, just to make sure that we can actually gauge the response from the public. I actually think, and members might disagree, especially in this area, but I think, and it's my experience actually, that the public's response to seeing the armed officers now is less challenging, if you like, and less, what I see as less concern, and I'm a strategic firearms commander and I've deployed armed officers far more overtly over the past 2 years to certain events that we have at any time in the past. And previously, when you used to get a bit of backlash from the public because of that, what you're seeing now is an understanding as to why that is, and the feedback we get is mainly about reassurance. So I think it's an unfortunate sign of the times that we require these officers. It's perhaps an unfortunate sign of the times that the public are more accepting of that. But we'll still be careful in terms of how we use these officers. I think overall it's a good thing for the division. It's more resources. It's given me another option in respect to how we address some of the priorities in the division. But as I say, we will be careful around the deployment, and we'll hear the feedback and take account of that.
And will there be any reports to this committee in the future about their deployment? I know you're not in control of them, but they're not your officers, but will you be able to report back to us?
I'm happy to compile a report for the next meeting on how we've used them as I say, we're starting just now, so that might be a good time actually to report to the committee and how we've utilised our armed officers over the next 6 months.
Thanks for that, Gary. I think that'll be very, very helpful. Councillor Howe again.
Well, slightly concerned when we see a rise of 25% of fatalities in the year, that the more perhaps proactive side of roads policing, such as speeding and mobile phone, is down now. I appreciate the reasons given in the report, but with regard to mobile phone use, we are coming to that time of the year where we're going to see a lot of contractors, silage season, young boys, big tractors, and I've yet to see one of these boys not on the phone as they're driving about. I'd like assurance that there'll be some sort of positive action, because we get numerous complaints about such behaviour, and very few appear to be getting reported.
No, I think that's something. I'll certainly take that back to our road policing colleagues. I think that's the drop-off, as you say, and you'd mentioned it there, largely I think accounted for improved technology. People don't need to actually have the phone to their ear, but not tractors. I get that, so that's something I'll take back to our road policing colleagues and ask for a bit of focus on. The road policing stats last year, number of fatalities were obviously really disappointing. I've said at this group before that there's an element of chance, unfortunately, involved in that, and what we saw last year was a big drop off in the number of road accidents in total, which is encouraging. And just to give you an idea of that kind of element of chance, by this time last year we had 6 fatalities. And I was sitting here speaking about 6 fatalities, and so far this year we've had none. We've had 2, unfortunately, from Dumfries and Galloway who died just over the weekend there, but not in the Dumfries and Galloway area. So as I say, there is that element of chance that goes around the fatalities. I'm actually happy with the figures, and I understand it might look as if there's a lack of proactivity. I know that's not the case, but I think your point about the tractors is a good one, Councillor, and something that we can focus on over the summer months.
Thank you. Councillor Charteris.
Yes, yesterday evening, Councillor Lever and I attended a meeting of the Heath Hall Community Council. Councillor may well have been aware of this, but I thought it was rather a good initiative, because we heard about speeding in Heath Hall, particularly of lorries, and being very noisy in the morning and going beyond the 20-mile-an-hour limit. And interestingly enough, their neighbours carries lorries are now monitoring the speed of their lorries from their offices in Locker Briggs, and if they see one of their lorries doing more than 20 miles an hour, they're on the phone to them and saying you're going too fast. And I think it's an excellent way of doing traffic calming for those lorries, which are causing wake up and noise and everything else in the next door estate, which is Heath Hall. I didn't know whether you were aware of it, but I think it's an excellent thing where a business is helping to reduce the speed of lorries going through an area. So I thought I'd just mention it here. We both listened with quite a lot of interest to how this had been arranged.
We've spoken quite a lot with businesses over the last year because of the concern that we have in various areas of the region in respect to lorries. Partly it's perception, because a big lorry rattling through a tight road, sometimes can sound as if it's going an awful lot faster than it is. But in other times, there has been concern in driving, and so we've tried to target those companies where we seem to get repeated reports from, and unsurprisingly, it's the bigger companies. So I was aware of the action that we're taking. I wasn't aware of that initiative that you spoke about there, which is interesting, and I think that's the way to actually get a change of behaviour, is when the companies start taking responsibility themselves. So I'll ensure that they're spoken to about how they're doing that, and see whether we can actually suggest it to some of the other companies that we've been dealing with as well.
Yes, they do say now that the worst speeders in Heath Hall are foreign lorries, which are setting off in the morning. And of course, they're not monitored they don't have any means of monitoring foreign lorries. But they do have a problem with the lorries pulling out from that lorry park in the morning, which are foreign owned and don't obey the speed limits, and they're not monitored either by couriers. I merely make that remark, so it's not 100%. There must be a limit to where they can go on what they're helping their local community.
Yeah, it's a fact of life in this region. We have a lot of lorries and commercial traffic coming into the area, and we don't have big dual carriageways running through, which would obviously make it a bit easier. But we'll keep doing what we can in respect to that. We do have a lot of enforcement. We get support from the council fairly regularly in terms of looking over the long-term trends and issues that might exist, and we use the equipment that the council have in respect of actually monitoring traffic over perhaps a 2-day period to give us a better idea of where the problems lie. So there is quite a lot that we can do in terms of targeting where the problems are. But I do think the longer term solutions come from the firms themselves actually engaging in enforcement activity, and that's a great example of that actually.
Good.
Thank you, Gary. Just one question from me. Page 12 of 64. It's third paragraph down. There's reference to an increase in disorder and an initiative launched in Annandale East, which had a significant effect, and there's reference to rolling it out to other areas within the division. operational issues aside, is there anything you can speak to us about in terms of the rollout and what we can see as elected members in terms of police activity in response to disorder?
Well, thanks, Chair. And this is a good point for me to actually introduce Superintendent Linda Jones, who's joining our command team following the retirement of Irvin Watson. Linda comes to us with a vast experience, having worked in Ayrshire Division next door, and also from our Contact Command and Control Centre. And I'm delighted that she's here in our senior team. She'll be a great asset to the division, and introduce her because just last week Linda has taken on the role of developing an antisocial behaviour strategy for the whole region. What we're looking at, the strategy that we had in Annandale East was very effective. We had a huge rise, as you might remember, last year in the number of antisocial behaviour incidents, and we curbed that. We're still up, unfortunately, which is quite disappointing for me. However, we had a dramatic fall-off in the early part of the year, which I think has kept our figures quite reasonable, considering where they were heading before. And it's not just about figures, obviously, it's about instance antisocial behaviour. So that was very much a police initiative. What Linda's going to look at is developing that along with our youth engagement strategy and along with our partnership strategies as well, and tying into some of the principles that we have in our Lloyd peer. So it'll be a very wide-ranging, hopefully multi-agency strategy. But as I say, we only discussed it last week, and I don't imagine she's got anything with her today that we can share at the moment, but I'll certainly bring it back to committee once we've developed that.
Thanks for that, Gary, and welcome, Linda. Councillor Ferguson.
Thanks. Gary kind of beat me to what I was going to ask her. It was about the ASBO strategy and how we're going to tie it in with the other antisocial behaviour strategies that RSLs and other partners have currently got, because there's no point reinventing wheels, as you know, Gary. So I'm pleased to hear that Linda's going to be heavily involved in that. The other strategy I was going to ask what your influence is in, and I noticed it's a bit about the substance misuse and the deaths, and then there's almost like, it's not quite a throwaway line because it's no like you, but along with our local alcohol and drugs partnership, we arranged and delivered drug and new psychiatric blah blah blah. But in the sentence just above that, you're on about reviewing information regarding non-fatal overdoses and opportunities for early intervention. And I think the kind of plea here is that how do we make sure that the ADP actually focus on interventions as opposed to merely treatment, is kind of the way they're operating just now. And I'm wondering if there is a way that the police can get their tuppence worth in. They say that we need this early intervention is crucial to the whole thing, taking it forward in the education side of it, rather than just taking people and treating them once they have a problem. Let's stop it happening. And so I'm wondering if you've got any input into that.
Yeah, well, locally that's going to tie into our youth engagement strategies, and and as part of that we'll be reviewing everything that our schools-based officers deliver in our schools. And as you know, we've got our Constable Jarden, who does an excellent amount of work, I think, in the division, and somebody we should hold on to, and he's developing that specifically from a police point of view. There definitely is something there in respect to the ADP stepping up to the plate, and I've asked our representatives on that to make sure that we go down the road very much intervention and prevention as much as we can, because I sit on the National Drug Strategy Group, which is chaired by ACC Steve Johnson, and it's only just kicked off this year, and this is about, and that's now a multi-agency group that's actually been convened by the Scottish Government to develop our local strategies around about tackling drug misuse and harm from drugs. And it's a very, very wide remit that group has, and it's almost like what we did with violence. It's treating it now, definitely moving it from the criminal sphere into the public health sphere. And of course, a major part of that is intervention and prevention. So I think it's a point well made. it's definitely the focus in drug activity or drug, it's less about enforcement now and far more about intervention and prevention. So it's my job to make sure that goes right through our local strategies, and I will.
Okay, thank you. I think we're ready to move on to the recommendation. The recommendation was to scrutinise the performance report on Dumfries and Galloway from Police Scotland for the period 1st April 17, 28 February 2018. Are we happy to have done that? Okay, thank you very much, Guy. We'll now move on to Item 5, Scottish Fire and Rescue Service, Dumfries and Galloway, Local Plan 9-month Performance Update, 1st of April 2017 to 31st December 2017. This report allows elected members to consider performance on key activities including fatal fire casualties, fires and malicious false alarms. Hamish McGee, local senior officer, is here to speak to the report, and I'll open up to members' debate. So I take it we are content with the report, and as I said all before, I think it's a very good performance report, and I certainly found it difficult to have any low-blower questions for Hamish, but if the members are happy, we'll move on to the report. The recommendation is that we scrutinise the report. Are we happy that we've done that out with the Chamber? Yes, thank you very much. So we'll move on to final item 6. Dumfries and Galloway Council responds to the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service consultation on transformation of the service, report by Director of Communities. Members have before them the Council's draft response to the consultation on the Scottish Fire and Rescue Transformation Programme. In the main, our response is positive and understands that the changing demands in the service will require it to adapt. We're very fortunate to have an excellent rural fire and rescue service served by committed staff from both the whole-time and retained service. Andrew Reid is here to speak to the report, and I will open up the meeting to members to add any further comments they would wish to see included in the response. Councillor Lever.
I agree with the general trend of this. I think we do have a very good service down here. We would want to see any further dilution by more centralisation of the facilities. But just one query, and I don't know whether Andrew can answer it or whether Hamish is in a better place, is page 48. We're awaiting the new tender that will be located in the region. What is the new tender?
I'll have to apologise and say I actually haven't seen the report because I weren't able to get any of the reports to me this morning. In terms of the new appliance that's coming to the east of the region, it's actually the Rapid Response Unit that will be going into Annan. It's a smaller vehicle. It carries the newest technology in terms of what they call a Cobra cold cut, which allows us to do external firefighting and to do very quick intervention to fires in the very early stages. It can also support out-of-hospital cardiac arrest when it comes. So the vehicle has been secured for Annan. It is due to arrive in July. We will then carry out some training, and it will then eventually hopefully go on the run round about August, September. Just so you're aware as well, because it probably is hot off the press, is that I've actually secured another vehicle for Drumore, the volunteers at Drumore, which is a great coup for us, if you like. It was a 4x4 with a trailer. They're now going to get a state-of-the-art fire appliance, and it shows the commitment of the service to invest, money in that particular site. So good news.
Councillor Murray, then Councillor Howie.
Right, thanks. Just a couple of points. I mean, I'm pleased to see that we do make the point that we don't want to see any reduction in either our stations or our staffing levels. I think it's important that we do make that point in response. But my question really was about the very final sentence where rightly we're welcoming the proposal for dedicated rural officers and wish to have 2 based in our region. I just wondered how we had hit on the number of 2 of these officers.
Thank you. The number of 2 came from Annandale and Estelle Committee. It was a member response to the consultation that went out, and that's specifically the reason why 2 was requested. Do we have any idea how many dedicated rural officers there might be across Scotland, and whether 2 is the appropriate proportion for Dumfries and Galloway?
Yes, there's 60 proposed for the rural officers. That will be 20 a year for the next 3 years, spread across the area, and it is specifically about supporting rural stations and the ability to get appliances on the run. As we've had many conversations over the years, the availability of appliances within our RDS stations in Dumfries and Galloway is very good, but this is an additional resource that I can call upon. I'm comfortable with the proposal that you've put forward, and would suggest that it would be looked on very favourably.
I suppose the point I would make is that given the land mass of Dumfries and Galloway in relation to the rest of Scotland, if there's going to be 60 rural officers, I would have thought perhaps we could request a rather higher proportion of those officers given the size of the region.
Andy?
Welcome to increase the figure. I mean, if we wanted to put a higher number on it and aim high, then I think welcome to go back with that. I mean, I suppose a minimum of 4, therefore we're reflecting the region as it currently sits, would be a reasonable position to go back on the consultation.
Yeah, I think it would be reasonable to reflect in the consultation response the extensive rural nature of our region, and to maximise the numbers as far as possible. Certainly ensuring there's equity across the country. Councillor Howe?
I'm assuming that is there going to be a tendency to replace ageing tenders with these new, more flexible tenders? Is that the intention, to spread them across the region?
Not necessarily, no. This is about supporting rural firefighting, so it's about providing a vehicle that is fit for purpose. Yeah, obviously there is a replacement for vehicles for fleet, but that isn't the main driver for these replacements. Although they will, we will take the oldest of vehicles out of use, but it's to give me a wider range of service delivery deployments, if you like, so I have a more tools in my box across the region. So Dromore gives me one of these vehicles in the west of the region, Annan gives me one in the east, and that's about as far as I want to go at the moment.
Right, now I just wondering, can you deploy them with fewer staff on? Just now I think a problem tends to be that you could only deploy if you had 4 retained going on a call. Do these machines give you the flexibility to deploy with lower numbers?
Yes, they do. They do allow that flexibility, but clearly that's part of a bigger picture of what is being deployed and what it's being deployed to. So it depends on what the call that comes in. The aspirations of the service moving forward are for us to support our partners in the wider social care agenda, and therefore it might not be appropriate for 4 people to sit on an appliance that's going to an out of hospital cardiac arrest. It might be 2, it could be 3. Again, it gives me that flexibility of how to deploy these resources in the future. Yeah. But can I just reassure you, they are not a precursor for reductions in staff, not at all. That is an absolute given. There are no reductions in either of those stations. It is just a change in an appliance.
Councillor Charteris and then Councillor Ferguson.
I'm just wondering whether the investigation into the deliberate fire at the Cruck Cottage in Torthorald has been completed between you and the police, or when you'll be able to make a statement to the Community Council and the owners of the Cruck Cottage as to actually what happened. Just adding to that, you probably may or may not know there's been another deliberate vandalism attack on Tunnel Church. Again, it was only a couple of miles away. And I'm just wondering, of course, whether your progress with the Cruck Cottage may lead to other developments in the apprehending the people who attacked the church.
Before you answer that, Hamish, I'm just wondering if that's possibly a matter for Councillor Charteris to have a chat with you off table. It's probably not appropriate to discuss at this level here. Happy with that, Councillor Charteris, to speak to Hamish off table?
I'm always happy with your decisions.
I wished it was the same for my good lady. Councillor Ferguson?
I'm happy with your decisions as well, Chair. I noticed you've been advertising a lot lately, Hamish, for retained and around the smaller areas. Can you just give us an indication of what kind of response and success you've had from this? It's not really what the paper's about, but it would be of interest to us, I would suggest.
The response so far has been very good. As with the service, and it's as I've said to you previously in some of these meetings, that it is always a challenge when people decide that they've come to the end of their career, and they retire. That it's quick for someone to give me a month's notice that they wish to retire, but it then takes me 8 months, 10 months to get someone through the process and get them fully trained up to be a counting member of the crew. But in general, I have to say that the response to our advertisements have been very positive, and I have a great gender mix, which is really I'm very happy about, because that we need more females in the service, and it's been great to see. I think probably as well part of the fact that you're actually seeing more of this means that we're being very successful in getting out there to our target audience, social media and through the press, etc. So hopefully my staff have done a decent job, but I'm very happy with the response we've had so far.
Thanks for that, Hamish. I think we'll move to the recommendation. So subject to the inclusion of the support for the retained fire stations, are we happy to agree to the recommendation? Okay, thank you very much. And I have item 7. I have no other business deemed urgent, and I'll bring the meeting closed. Thank you very much.